We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
There's so many more applications than just seamless use of systems in the room. It does things like it gathers insights on room utilization, health, energy. It collects things like temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide, VOCs, which like ethanol, formaldehyde, which I don't know when you're going to be coming into contact with formaldehyde in a corporate meeting room.
Hopefully never.
Hopefully never.
Lord.
At the end.
At the end.
Oh, he looks so peaceful.
Shut up, lady. Peaceful is not how I roll. The rental markets for high-end DV LED, getting building management together with AV systems, and who's in charge of the user experience. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 706, recorded Friday, February 28th, 2025. Controlling the end user experience. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest AV news and information we have gathered. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information, my buddy and pal, Mr. Brock McGinnis from Toronto and nationwide. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Tim. Good to be here.
Good to see you. And I got to hang out with Brock at ISC, so good to see him. It was good to see him in person, but obviously always good to have him here. Also with us is an old friend, Scott Tyner. Actually, the entire cast today is on the East Coast. So Mr. Tyner from Bates College up in Maine. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. It's always fun to join.
Absolutely. And last but not least, somebody who is brand new, so you two be nice to her, please. Vanessa Tolosano from Kinley. Welcome.
Hi, Tim. Thank you.
A couple things. We are recording this on the 28th of February, and we just announced the AVNation Reader's Choice Awards for 2024. So congratulations to everybody who won. It was a record-breaking year for the amount of votes. I was blown away, quite frankly. So congratulations to everybody. The AVNation AV Professional of the Year is Brett Yesner, but you can check out that entire thing. I'll have Mitchell put a link up on this page's website. First story comes to us, quite frankly, from our friends over at AV Magazine. German online portal MIT24 is offering Samsung's micro LED display, The Wall, through a rental program. Now, the rental program starts at basically $1,300 US, 1,250 euros monthly. These rental agreements cover 12, 24, or 36 months, not to be silly, but the longer you rent it, the cheaper it is. It includes professional installation by a company called Integrator IDS. The price points, of course, like I just said, vary based on the length. 12 months, you're looking at about $3,000, $3,200 monthly for a 12-month lease, all the way down to a 36-month lease, roughly going to run you about $1,700. According to the article in an AV Magazine, quote unquote, in order to make the wall more attractive for companies in particular, Samsung is now increasingly marketing the rental model and is relying on cooperation with rental portals. Brock, going to start with you. Brock has done a number of experiential jobs, both in the States and Canada, as well as over in Europe. Where is the rental market, not necessarily for the wall, but just the walls is what we're talking about, but just upscale displays like this?
This particular, advertisement for Samsung's wall, this is a lease. This isn't a rental. You're not going and picking it up on Friday and dropping it back Sunday morning.
Okay.
36 months at $1,250, $1,300 a month. It's like $45,000. That makes complete and total sense for a 136-inch all-in-one at 1.5 mil or whatever. So it's there's nothing remarkable about what they're talking about. That said, there's a huge market for fine pixel pitch LED on the rental for rental staging for events. Places that used to have projection now want LED because it's brighter, it's higher contrast, it's certainly more reliable. Once you set it up, people like Absen, for example, they've got 1.9 mil in their basic lightweight rental inventory. Yep. I think ROE's full rock and roll rental staging product is available down to about 2.5 mil. Everybody wants a better picture, and they want higher resolution, and certainly they want that that contrast and that smooth surface that LED offers. So I don't think that there's any question that LED rental will continue to grow and grow and grow. We had an election here in Ontario last night. Every one of the three party leaders' headquarters had rental LEDs up on stage, and the winner had a huge fine pixel pitch, and really good quality even on camera. So it was a high spec product.
Yeah. Vanessa, take a look at this from the standpoint of folks that are involved in kind of the buildings and putting those up. Talk for a second about the difference between CapEx and OpEx, capital expenditures, meaning you're buying this once, versus operating expenditures, which is kind of what this falls into. As Brock said, $45,000 for 3 years. What's the decision-making process for something like this? Like when it comes to, hey, I like Brock said, I really want the latest, greatest technology. Maybe an operating expenditure here makes more sense than purchasing roughly $500,000, sometimes $650,000 is roughly what the wall costs, depending on the size and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that you definitely have to take into consideration is the support side of it. So when you're looking to buy upfront the wall, you're looking at the ongoing maintenance, the support, and the support packages that go along with it. So if you were to just rent it, I'm sure a lot of those costs are wrapped up into that. But you're ultimately probably going to end up spending a lot more money on renting it than you were to just buy it up front, get the support packages, get the maintenance.
So if you were advising a client, does it is it one of these situations where it depends on what their ultimate outcome is, or would you say, no, 75% of the time I'm going to tell you to buy it, or 75% of the time I'm going to tell you to rent it?
It would really depend on what the application is for. So are you looking to use it at just some corporate events, corporate meetings? Are you looking to use it on ongoing trainings? How often are you going to be using something like this? If you're going to be using it all the time, I would absolutely advise buy it up front, put the money into it, get your support packages in place. But if you're going to look at using it maybe once a month or even less, probably just rent it.
All right. Mr. Tyner, when you look at leasing models like this, because Brock is right, this is a lease, how does this impact your approach to procurement, again, versus capital or operation expenditures?
At a place like Bates, I actually have to kind of step a little bit out of AV in order to really answer a question like this, because where we most deal with situations like this is a lot in our sciences, where we buy very expensive pieces of equipment in a capital expense, and 10 years later we have $1 million piece of equipment that nobody has $1 million to replace. And so we have to balance that with the concept of, we also don't want to increase what we call our platform costs. If you're in the United States right now, particularly, you understand that the whole cost of higher ed is an enormous issue, and every higher ed institution is trying to keep that platform cost as low as possible. And so there's that balance of, great that we get a grant, great that we have a donation, let's do this capital, versus do we put this into our budget, increase the platform cost, but we know that we've got some device going, we get some money going forward to continue to support this device. And I think that those decisions come in based on how critical we find it to what we do. as opposed to is it just a feature. So if we're doing a classroom, that is actually in our case operating expenses and renovating and upgrading that classroom's an operating expense. Whereas if there was something fancy we put in a new building and wanted to do a wall, I think we'd probably buy it and kick the can down the road for 15 years and we needed to do something different.
And that kind of brings up a really quick follow-up. What do you do at the end of, you mentioned $1 million piece of equipment that in 10 years we don't have $1 million to replace? And it may not be a question for you because Scott is not in the accounting department. But what is it that you do? This is more kind of for everybody. When you are kind of in that position where, either it was a grant, right? It was a gift. Because, again, 100 years ago, I used to work in universities, and we would be given a building, right? And that's fantastic. $20 million nursing facility at Lewis and Clark right before I left. But you are kind of stuck then at that point as the institution with the upkeep and the maintenance of that fantastic gift, regardless of how much that gift cost.
And this is an ongoing conversation in AV. People are having to replace their technology regularly. Yep. And it's not a one-time spend, it's an every year spend. And Scott, I'm sure you have a scheme at Bates that you're replacing 1/3 of your classrooms or 1/4 or 1/5 of your classrooms every year. Vanessa, at Kinley, you've got these huge global accounts. And I'm sure they're doing exactly the same thing in the corporate world because nobody can come up with that $1 million. Tim, I did want to point out that the product that they're renting or leasing for $1,250 a month, that is not the $500,000 wall. Okay. So Samsung now has taken that name that we've imagined as being this amazing piece of technology, and it's their everyday LED all-in-one. It's all branded. It's all branded the wall now.
Got it. All right. The $500,000 one.
It's a $30,000 item.
The $500,000 one's nice too.
Yeah.
So there's a mansion somewhere in LA that has a couple of them that I'm aware of. I've never been to it. I've seen pictures.
Apparently, Drake down the street from me has one too.
Our next story comes to us from Rave Pubs and our friend David Danto. Danto writes about the long-missed connection between building management and AV systems. Because David is of a certain age, he likens the opportunity to the hit romantic comedy When Harry Met Sally. If you watched the Super Bowl, you saw a repeat of that very scene. According to Danto, audiovisual technology and building management systems are finally coming together after years of quote-unquote missing each other. Despite their obvious capability, with AV systems collecting valuable data about room bookings, occupancy, and meeting requirements, while building management controls lighting, HVAC, and security, these two crucial workplace components have historically operated in separate silos, often speaking different languages during construction projects where AV integration frequently becomes an afterthought. One quick side note here. The very last Infocom 100, back when Avixla was called Infocom, this was one of the topics of bringing together. And again, this was probably 12, 13 years ago. Vanessa, I want to start with you on this. Simple question here. Where do we see the need, or what do we see from AV building management and AV systems coming together?
I think that no matter what you do in this industry, whether you're an engineer, you work in sales, or you're like myself, a program manager, the driving force behind everything that we do is ultimately the end user experience. So how often have you been in a meeting where somebody's complaining about the lights, the temperature, there's too much sun coming in through the windows? I mean, being able to have a piece of technology that users can just seamlessly interact with everything in the room. You're putting more time into the meetings, the people that you're speaking with, the clients, whatever it may be. And it's taking away from the annoyances like the temp. I mean, beyond that, there's so many more applications than just seamless use of systems in the room. You have energy management. We have the Logitech Spot. That's due to come out in the last half of this year, actually. It does things like it gathers insights on room utilization, health, energy. It collects things like temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide. What was the other thing it did? It was VOCs, which like ethanol, formaldehyde, which I don't know when you're going to be coming into contact with formaldehyde in a corporate meeting room.
Hopefully never.
Yeah, I mean, unless your coworker's Jeffrey Dahmer, but hopefully never.
At the end.
It's just another added benefit for companies that maybe want to take an extra step towards like health and safety compliance, So it does all these cool things with the environment, but it's also a room occupancy sensor.
Yeah.
So it's sensing when people are going in and out of those rooms. How great would it be able to be to walk into a room and the system senses you're there and it auto books the room for you? Say your meeting ends early. You walk out, senses no one's there. Boom, that room's back and available for people to be able to book. So it's really increasing the efficiency of business operations in terms of scheduling meetings, bookings, etc. But then if it's over a long term, sensing how often is this room being used, you can start using that data for things like consolidation efforts, seeing like, hey, like we have this huge building and all these meeting rooms. How often are we really using these rooms? So that'll start giving you some baseline data for all these digital transformation projects that we're seeing all over the place right now.
So this is a happy just kind of accident that I have Tyner on this week, because Scott is the first person that I knew that was taking a control system and the data that it was giving him, and this is 15 years ago, and making business decisions based on that. So Scott, with that long history of using AV system, I mean, seriously, what Vanessa's saying is taking more and more information. Can we as an industry, and can we as colleges or corporations really take that information and do something meaningful with it?
Absolutely. If we're willing to collect it and we're willing to use it, and I say that, and Tim, you'll understand, in higher ed, there's always a lot of tension about what kind of information you're collecting, what are you going to do with it. But as Vanessa said, room occupancy, we would use that in a way to determine, do we need another classroom building? Do we need another computer lab? And so we can take all of this data of how often the lab's being used, as in how often are people logging into the computers? How long do our cameras detect a full room instead of just half the computers being used, and really use this data in order to help make a decision about when we put in a new building, do we need another computer lab, or do we need more classrooms, or what size classrooms? Because many larger schools have very regimented schedules. Anybody who went to college knows Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have 1 hour classes, and Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have hour and a half classes. And Bates doesn't do that quite as much, and a lot of the smaller colleges don't. We might have a Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday class. And so for us, this data would even be more important to really know, how are these rooms getting used? How do we equip them with technology? And how do we schedule them so that we don't have to build rooms that maybe we don't need?
Yeah. Really quick side note, Scott was a superhero to many of us, because he was the first person also to use that data to get rid of VCRs back in the late 20s.
We did do that, and for those of us in higher ed, and this might be changing right now. We're still seeing a little bit of change. We've actually used our data to argue to keep computers in classrooms. There's been a big push over the past few years, and it might be starting to tilt towards saying let them bring their own devices. But wow. We've had data that says 95% of the people that walk into our classrooms use that computer, even though 100% of them have laptop computers.
Wow, that's cool. And Brock, that is kind of the point of the data, right? Is making business decisions and being able to help, in your case, your customers make intelligent business decisions. So where do we see kind of this intersection, and do we see it I guess, sticking this time or really happening this time? Again, we've been talking about this for well over a decade that I'm aware of.
Yeah, if I talk to my customers or their landlords, they will say that the building management system is about the physical building, and the collection of data on users and rooms is something else. That's operational. It's not facilities, and people get very territorial about facilities, and they really don't want any outside agency like a user in a meeting room fiddling with the temperature, at least not outside of range. I'm in the middle of a very cool corporate headquarters project right now, where the owner, who's a developer building their own headquarters, had this idea that the AV system should control everything. And that was going to be that AV was in charge, and everything else was going to report up to AV. and I'm arguing against that successfully because I don't want AV controlling it. I want AV being a user access point, but that HVAC system, no, I'm going to let the HVAC experts program that. I'm going to access their programming remotely. We're still negotiating whether I have to do that on BACnet, which is a challenge. But I want to give the user the ability only to say we're leaving the building for the weekend, so you can lower the temperature. I certainly don't want to give users temperature control in meeting rooms, because half of us on this call would like it warmer than it is now, and half of us would like it cooler. And that's not efficient in terms of running it. But more to the point, so the people who bought QSIS, Acuity, they're putting the lighting control in this facility. And they're also providing the occupancy sensors, because the occupancy sensors, which are of the sophisticated nature that Vanessa was describing when she was talking about the Spot from Logitech. So this is sensing the amount of daylight in a room, and it's adjusting the lighting to the daylight. And over top of that is a level of programming within Acuity's Nlight system that is going to give them, the light levels that they prefer. And as the AV provider, I'm going to access some presets that says they want it a little brighter for a meeting, or they want it a little darker for a meeting, or they want to be able to turn it off. But I'm not controlling the lighting. I'm just giving the user some choices about how the lighting that was programmed into that system, because it's way more sophisticated than I want responsibility to control. Same thing with the shades. Yes, it's going to be too bright. Do I want shades that automatically go up and down? Well, I've been involved in those projects, and it drives users nuts that, the atomic clock says the sun is moving across at this point, and all of a sudden in a large meeting room, you got 12 shades coming down at the same time, and nobody can hear themselves think. So there's I love that there are protocols in place, and Acuity and Lutron, the shade people, and the HVAC folks, they all have protocols that allow my systems and the user to interface with theirs. And they all have IP-based systems that the user can also go in and make some adjustments. A designated password-protected user can make some adjustments. But I think that I still think that building systems should be handled by the building people, not by the AV people. Our only expertise here is, as Vanessa pointed out, the user experience. So let's put controls where the user can find them, knows how to operate them, are the same controls in every meeting room, so there's no learning from one room to the other. And maybe there's a single pane of glass instead of what the interior designers on this project are calling wall acne. where you've got, 6 different sets of controls and buttons inside. But it's still 12 years later, Tim, from that InfoComm 100 we were at. It's still a fascinating topic, and it's about what you be afraid, Mr. Danto, what you ask for, because you don't want to be responsible for all the things that can go wrong with all those other systems.
If I could add on to that, because Brock, you make a lot of really good points. And something that you touched on was the light sensors sensing how much daylight is outside and adjusting the lights accordingly. Something that I think people are going to see a lot of value in is the energy management aspect of these kinds of devices. Automating AV systems to turn off when they're not in use, adjusting lighting when people aren't in the rooms. How many times have you driven through a city and you see these massive buildings with 100 lights on, and you're like, wow, their electric bill must be terrible. So something that I'm seeing with a lot of the digital transformation projects is a focus on eco-friendly energy management. And at the tail end of that, you're ultimately saving on your electric bill, and what client doesn't want to save a little bit of money, Well,
and this is kind of a generic overall arching question, and there may not be an answer to it, but what Brock said was, as an integrator, not wanting to have that control. But there's some folks that we all do business with that 100% want that control, and I would argue that was kind of part of the Acuity QSys acquisition, is that, Acuity wants that control. Crestron wants that control. Extron, anybody that makes a control system, they all have systems that will talk to building management systems. So there's a different segment, Brock, that would disagree with you, I guess, is the best way to put that.
And they would, but most of us in the AV business would have to develop a lot more expertise.
Okay.
On how those building systems actually work before we would want the liability of truly operating them, rather than simply being a user interface with them.
I agree with Brock just so much on this one. When some of those companies started talking about this years ago, can we talk to your facilities group? And I just like, no, you can't. Look them up on the internet if you want, because I'm not putting you in touch and telling my facility group to start installing your products to manage systems. To me, it's always been this, and I think Danto's piece got a little bit at this. It's almost this respect piece, right? And this is what I hear Brock saying is, I respect what you do. You respect what I do. Let me be the expert at this. And if you want me to bring blinds up and down, control some lights, I'm happy to do that. Give me the access to do that as we see fit. But too many times it's a fight, and it's I need that and you don't need that. I don't want you controlling that. But like Brock says, no way. I don't want to be responsible for when we're gone for winter break and something stops working and a building freezes and pipes start bursting. And
this same project has access control and remote door activation. It's got security and surveillance and alarm. So they'd love to be able to see on their Crestron panel whether the window contacts or the door contacts throughout the building are all green beforehand. And I don't mind doing that for them, right? I just don't want to be in charge of the actual security system. I'll happy to be that pane of glass and sell them the countless hours of programming required to get them there.
Beyond just not wanting the users to be fiddling with everything, you also have to think about the points of failure that you're introducing to these systems when you just start throwing everything together. I mean, I know a lot of us probably know about Occam's razor, the principle of usually the simplest solution is the best, where if we start throwing in alarms and lighting and HVAC and whatever else people can think of to just bundle up in these systems, what happens when something starts failing? It's going to be a lot more complicated, a lot more expensive, and time-consuming to fix these things.
And we're all in the risk management business. Every decision that Scott makes about the systems that are used in his classrooms and labs are based on risk, right? Risk of the users not interfacing properly, and risk of the product failing and not doing the job, the enabling of education that it's intended to do. Vanessa, we're integrators. Everything we do or decision we make is about, can we deliver this project working on time to the client's expectation, and how do we minimize the risk in that? And building management is an enormous risk.
That'll be a good place to stop. Thank you all so much. Scott Tyner from Bates College. Thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
You can reach me on X. You can reach me on at S. Tyner. You can reach me on Blue Sky, checking that out at Scott P. Tyner. And over at Rave Pubs, I write articles on occasion.
Like once a month, twice a month, whatever. Scott's also usually on our EdTech podcast about once a month, so you can check him out there. Mr. McGinnis, again, thank you, sir. Good to see you.
I'm available on LinkedIn. I don't go to X very much anymore, but I'm still there as at Brock McGinnis. Business address is brock@nationwideav.com, not to be confused with the Nationwide that rents things. We're an integrator in Toronto.
All right, very good. Vanessa, very nice to have you on. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And before we get to your personal, we do want to mention Dom Rosendahl, who had just passed away. He worked for Kinley for a long time, and a long time AV industry icon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. I did want to give Dom a spotlight here. Dom was the head of design in the Americas. He unfortunately passed away this past weekend on February 23rd. He's worked in the AV industry for over 30 years. Kinley was lucky enough to have him starting back in 2017. He was based in the UK and then came over to the Americas to be closer to some family. He's best known for his expertise in the AV engineering and design space. He was a colleague and a really good friend to many. His spirit will really continue to live on in all of our projects. He made a really big impact at Kinley Global Services. We don't have any details on funeral arrangements or anything. You can find me on LinkedIn, and my business email is vtolisano@kinley.com. If you are a friend, a former colleague, if you know Dom, if you're interested, my inbox is always open, and I will share whatever information that I have.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And again, very, very nice to have you on. We appreciate it. I mentioned at the top of this that our annual Reader's Choice Awards is now live. They are announced. I will not be commenting on anything to do with the AVNation AV Professional of the Year beyond what I said in the recording, except the fact that there can only be one winner. Sorry. Terribly sorry. I do not care how many times you DM me or send me an email. There is only one. Period. That is it. All right. Mitchell's been working his tail off this week because he not only had his regular job, but he also had to put together the awards video. Speaking of his regular job, we have a brand new Women in AV, where Erica Carroll sits down with the founder and the head of Rosie Riveters. It's a fantastic organization looking at how to get more women into the STEM occupations as well as AV. So you can check that out on the website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Don't follow me on anything. If you're interested in what I have to say beyond the world of AV, you can look at my articles on LinkedIn. That's about the extent of what I'm comfortable saying about my social. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. How about that? If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go subscribe to the podcast if you just want to listen to us. And if you're listening to us and you want to see what we all look like, you can go look at us on YouTube. But go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation. Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's Estate of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out Estate of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.